Alrighty, y'all. Welcome back to Beyond Adjustments and welcome to season 2. Quick thing before we jump in, this season we're changing the format a bit. Some conversations just deserve more room, and you'll see more part 1, part 2, and sometimes even part 3. Especially if there's, more meat on the bones, if you know what I mean. This first episode is a great example of that. I sat down with Dr. Lee Matthis. We spent a lot of time talking about transitions, new chapters, new practices, how your thinking shifts when you're no longer just treating patients, but building something that actually reflects who you are. There's a lot of honesty in this one, a lot of reflection, and a lot of perspective you only get after years in practice. Welcome back to Beyond Adjustments, Season 2, y'all. New format. And we're jumping straight in. Dr. Lee Matthis is back on the show. And since the last time we talked, he stepped into a new practice called Intrinsic Wellness Collective. No long intro today because you probably just heard me talk your ear off a second ago in another clip, but we're going to just talk. So Dr. Lee, good to see you again, man.
And you too. I mean, thank you again for having me back, and congrats on season 2. That's
Yes,
awesome.
sir. Yes, sir. Audience
Yeah.
is growing. They're loving the content, so we're just going to keep bringing it to them. Um, How does it feel to be back on the mic in a new practice?
This is pretty exciting. There are no constrictions. Of course, there weren't in my previous
Sure.
conversations, but yeah, I've turned over a new leaf. My wife and I were very quickly abandoned by our children, as it were. We became empty nesters on a Monday when we moved our youngest into college, and I started in a new practice on Tuesday.
Wow.
So we're empty nesting with a new nest. So I was really excited to have a little bit of semblance of normal from my old life,
Yeah.
being back on the podcast. So thank you.
Love it. Love it. How has your day-to-day rhythm really changed since jumping into intrinsic?
It slowed down quite a bit. Um, First couple months we lived up in this area, my dogs weren't with me. I had no children in the house. I really didn't know what to do with myself. I was able to sleep in a little longer than I usually did. I hadn't found my gym yet, things of that nature. But now we're starting to get our routine down, and I'm spending a good amount of time with patient care, but I'm also spending a lot of time outside of the office,
Mm-hmm.
kind of getting to know people, getting to know my new community, meeting other providers, and marketing myself and our clinic, and just having a good time at it. So
Yeah. Yeah. New chapter energy hits different, right? So I can
yes,
I
sir,
can
it
see that.
does.
What's how about this? What's been the biggest surprise so far, good or challenging?
Oh, wow. The biggest surprise to me is knowing that everybody turns their eyes toward me,
Mm,
uh, as the buck stops with me. I don't have to have a conversation or sit in committee or run it up a chain. That it just stops with me, and I have to have the answers, whether I have them immediately or whether I need to get back to somebody. Uh, be it a my payroll company or HR or whatever it is that I'm currently working with. It's like, yeah, well, they come back to me for the
mm-hmm.
answer. I can't pass that on.
Yeah.
So that hits a little different as well.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So let's rewind a little bit because intrinsic didn't exist last time we talked. Did you take over a practice or did you start this fresh?
I did. A dear friend of mine from graduate school, we started at Palmer together almost 25 years
Wow.
ago now. He's been in the Charlottesville area for about 10 years. His wife is in psychiatry, and she got her dream job right outside of Atlanta. And so, real quickly, he had to, in a few months, he had to move his whole family to Atlanta. And he called one day and said, "I'd like you to buy my
Wow.
practice." And I thought, wow, that's out of right
Yeah.
field. um, but I talked it over with some very, very close mentors and confidants of mine. And, just the timing of it could not have been more more appropriate. It was, Dr. Nathaniel was coming back into his family practice that I had been into or been in for almost 19 years. He was able to step into the clinic that I took over from his father. So it was a beautiful full circle for the Tuck Chiropractic Group. My wife and I love the Charlottesville area. I did my internship about 20 miles out of town. We thought we were going to be here until that position opened up. So it's kind of a full circle for me as well. And now that I could help a friend out and step into an established practice and not have to do everything from the ground up, it was a blessing all the way around for everybody.
Love
So.
it. And it sounds like it's not something that you're actually looking for. It kind of just found you.
Right. Yeah, it really came out of right field. I've been chatting with James for a few weeks. He was talking to me about selling his practice, and actually he was talking to me about the folks that were looking to buy his practice and the frustrations he was having in that. He was bouncing off of me, and one night he just couldn't sleep. So first thing the next morning he called me. He said, I'm gonna sell it to you. And I thought, well, that's just, yeah, it was completely out of right field, but everything has fallen in lockstep and really makes you
Gotcha.
realize that somebody else is in control when it goes out of food. So
Yeah. So
very cool.
oh, what kind of made you pause and actually consider it seriously? Because so you were with Tuck for, you said you were 6 weeks shy of hitting your 19th year with Tuck Clinic, which
Yes, sir.
you've praised Tuck Clinic like, it's a great practice to work for, and it sounds like it still
Sure,
is.
sure.
But
It is.
what made you pause and consider something like this? It's a big move.
It was a huge move. It is, and to your point, I'll always speak nothing but good things about Tuck
Yeah.
Chiropractic. They're extremely stellar in the profession, and it was an absolutely heart wrenching decision for me to make, both from the colleagues I had for that long time, for my
Mm.
patient, and from where we'd raised our children. We've been in the Southwest Virginia area for almost 20
Wow.
years, and had some very dear friends there, but. It coincided at kind of one of those forks in the road of midlife. I had my 45th birthday was soon coming up. It's past. I'm 45 now, but that was on its way. We were asking a bunch of deep questions about what we do in the next chapter of our lives as our youngest leaves home, flies the nest, and goes off to college. Both of our older two children were gainfully employed, and building the next chapters of their lives. So it offered some
Hmm.
introspection. And my wife and I just said to each other, if we don't do it now, we'll never do it. It's a now or never kind of
Yeah.
thing. And everything, like I said, just kind of lined up.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, we
Yeah.
we ripped the
It.
Band-Aid off pretty quick on this, but
I got you. I definitely hear that. So I know there's risk, right, in making these kind of decisions.
it,
And it's, to
yeah,
me, from what you're telling me at least, it sounds like, less of a risk and more of a really alignment for you. Like this just made sense.
it just made sense. I could pass along what I had worked hard to build to the next generation down at Tuck, and they could take that into the direction that it was inevitably headed. I had the opportunity to step in. I've always wanted to, kind of have ownership in my own clinic, and done a lot of research over the last 5 or 10 years
Hmm.
on entrepreneurialism, and I can make this thing my own, outside the confines of a 8 clinic system. I can have a 1 clinic system, and um, we can pivot a lot quicker. Some of the pros that small clinics have, I now have, with the wisdom and insight of what a large clinic system would
Hmm.
do in that same scenario.
Yeah.
So
So let's see how this decision shows up clinically. So I want to talk a little bit. I want to see how you think now. So when,
sure,
we've talked
sure.
about how, when patients walk in and what they should expect, etc. So I
Yes,
want to compare almost in my mind, and we'll see if listeners, those that are following at least, see the difference, if any. Like when a new patient now walks in, right? Somebody walks in today. Now, what are you like? What are you listening for, right? Now, you're not only shifted to your own practice, but you
sure.
shifted into an environment that already exists too. You don't want to shock the system either, right? So, what are you listening for now? Like mechanically, neurologically, emotionally, from a business
Sure.
perspective? Like, how does that look for you?
Um, that was beautifully worded question. From a clinical approach, I still hierarchically will look for neurological red flags, neurological pain generators. What, what neurologically will I be working with in this patient? Um, Mechanically, I have a couple other not only modalities but providers at my disposal under the roof
Mm,
of Intrinsic Wellness. We're not a chiropractic clinic. We are a wellness collective.
mm,
I have two massage therapists, both separately trained in multiple modalities. I have an acupuncturist that works in house with us. I have cold laser. I have decompression. I have shockwave. The building I'm in, there are multiple body workers upstairs in different units. We have multiple counselors in this building as well. So I would think it's a broader offering of what I can offer a patient as I vet through clinically what they presented
mm,
with. Um, I can also layer on that what might be some perpetuating factors, what might be some psychosocial issues that are causing them to seek out care. I don't have to be everything to everybody here. I can say, you know what, you got a pretty hot trigger point. I'm gonna have one of my massage therapists take care of that for you, or a lot of stagnation in this area. Let's get you over and do some acupuncture today. It has slightly changed. I'm stealing from the former world down at Tuck. That theoretically um, we would have a patient present, and we would have a set intake. We would have a set screening exam, just like the Tuck group did. But now I can share that information with multiple providers. After one exam, multiple providers can now look at that information and say, "Oh, I would be able to do this with this aspect, or I would be able to do this." The pathway concept that you and I have spoken
mm,
about in the past is also one of those things. A patient comes in and they would be better served by a massage therapist or an acupuncturist or a counselor. If like, listen, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to co-treat you with my colleague right across the
right.
hallway or right upstairs. So it builds a much more collaborative or collective, if you will, approach to how I'm vetting patients as they come in now.
Mm. Do you feel like your we'll call it your younger you, and I can say that I'm 45, so
There you go.
we
Good.
share the same age, um, but your
Sure.
younger you, your Tuck Clinic self, do you feel like now being in your own space, you're obviously looking at it, although you did run that practice like your own business, um, did
Sure.
do you notice now that you're, again, your quote unquote younger you, like what do you notice essentially that you would have missed as, yeah,
It,
being in the seat that you're in?
um, almost 20 years in, I do have, half a career worth of experience. My younger me did not have that. I had, the handful of folks I had treated, some tales that the older chiros and mentors had told me, and I had my academic textbook learned. Um, I also had a lot of ego
Mm,
that would say, this patient came in my office and I need to take care of them. They want me to take care of them. All the times I was not the provider they needed, and ego got in the
mm,
way. The frustrating thing about healthcare is, as we've discussed this as well, it is a fee for service model. So you get paid to do stuff, whether it's the right stuff or not, whether you're the right provider to provide those services, you get paid to do stuff. So now that am out of the insurance world, we're a fee for service cash based clinics. Um, And I want to perpetuate that, make sure that we're here for a long time. I'm incentivized to get the patient both personally and for the patient's benefit. Personally, if somebody else could treat them better, that's less work for me. If somebody else can treat them better, they're going to get better outcomes. So let's start them down that pathway
Yeah.
sooner. So I do think it's a combination of more experience, a little dampened ego, and that idea that I do work with some very, very competent people that I want to be successful as
Mm.
well.
So what is that tipping point? Like, how do you actually decide when somebody needs your care versus not?
There, there is some unspoken, some unspoken. There's a feel, so to speak. If the patient and I are making great eye to contact and we're connecting, and I'm not having to force questions to get answered, I'm not having to drag things out of them. It's probably going to be a good working uh, interaction between me and them as a provider and a patient. If it's a little less, little more subdued, they're not as open or altering quite as
Mm.
much. I might tag somebody in at that point and say, "Hey, listen, I'm had this patient, and I was just wondering, would you be willing to kind of do an assessment and see if you might be able to offer some help?" Um, and that too comes with the baggage that the patient brings in. um I've had quite a few folks come in and say, oh, this, that, and the others hurt really bad, but I don't want anybody to crack me. I don't want anybody to crack me. That's a bridge you have to build to the
Mm-hmm.
patient, meet them where they're at, and then do what you can for them. If somebody else can get across a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more effectively, then of course I'm happy to offer
Yeah.
that.
I mean, it sounds like there's a clinical slash emotional slash business intuition, right? So,
Sure.
but how,
It's the three-legged stool of a business model in healthcare.
oh, okay. Well, I just made that up, but that's great.
You did. Brilliant. Trademarked.
but how do you balance so how do you balance that, intuition with, because I'm there, there's gonna be objective findings, right? Like
Sure.
when those don't
There are.
perfectly like agree, like how do you balance that?
And that is, I'll harken back to my younger chapters. That is shared decision
Mm,
making. That is when you take those objective facts and you say, hey, listen, I love you to death. I do anything I can to help you. However, this hip is not going to feel better today. I'll actually make it feel
yeah.
worse. What we probably need to do is get you to an orthopedist and get some X-rays, MRI, look at more interventional type stuff. The the genuine approach that I've always I was taught this by the Tuck crew, and I'll continue to stand by it. If you're genuine with the person in front of you, they feel that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can bring in other emotions and other feelings, and trust is built on that quite a bit. To make a phone call when a patient's had a bad day, just shoot them a text, say, hey, you were a little rough today, and I hope the adjustment made you feel better.
Mm,
um, that's one of those things that builds that emotional armor, so to speak, so that the patient's more trusting when they're in here.
mm,
And then you can offer, referral advice or other treatment advice, or you can have some pretty good heart to heart patients and say, listen, you weigh a deuce and a quarter and you're on the frame of a 140-pound person. You're going to continue to hurt unless we can get you active and start working on some of that weight gain that you've had over the last 5 or 6 years, whatever it is. So,
yeah. I'm, there's discernment there. Like I see that. Like I see how you operate. There's definitely some discernment, and I have a feeling that shows up in your approach to your handiwork, we'll call it, right? So
it's very nice,
specifically,
very nice. You know, I mean,
you're yeah, go
I
ahead.
do think that concept I do think that concept can be taken beyond just the handiwork. Interaction with my staff member, interaction with my other providers in the office, that same discernment, that same, what do we want here? How do I honor this other person's input and opinion they're what they offer and bring to the team. How do we honor that with them so that they feel more trust? They feel like a tighter knit group, and we can move
Yeah.
forward and further forward together.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And I think again that discernment really shows up, or I think it would, at least if you're staying true to it, um, shows up in your approach to, how you might, manipulate someone's neck or back. Like it's all part of it. I think so. That said, I want to actually touch a little bit on that. So let's talk
Sure.
upper cervical, Dr. Lee. So,
Uh,
so how do you decide, like, when upper cervical care is appropriate versus, full spine, or is there a diversified approach? Like, how do you decide that?
that is a beautiful question, and I'm still figuring that out. So for the last 19 years, I was a full spine diversified practitioner. I had a couple technique spinoffs here and there with SOT and just a touch of AK and stuff like that. But Dr. Tickle, whom I bought the practice from, loved the upper cervical model. He was not an upper cervical practitioner, but he loved the concept of that. He's a second generation chiropractor. His mother, father, and three of his siblings are all
Wow.
chiros. So he was buried. His godfather was Jim Parker. So he was named after Dr.
Right.
Jim. So he comes from a chiro lifestyle that, most of his mentors in the business studied at the feet of BJ, excuse me, back in the 50s and
Wow.
60s. His father had many, many mentors and was an amazing chiropractor and author and speaker, visionary for the profession. So he respects the upper cervical modalities, be they NUCA or Blair or AO. And a lot of the patients here were used to that. I was steeped in those waters too back on Brady Hill, where I was the TA in the toggle class. I've toggled several people through the years, but it was not my daily driver, so to speak. And here I get to do a little bit more of that through a tensegritus lens. So the QSM3 world, the BGI world, several of those techniques that I studied and knew about in grad school and then were really drawn to. I'm having the opportunity to revisit those and put it into play with patients and get some really awesome results. So
Speaking of results, are there nervous system changes that you might see, like that the patient don't
yes,
immediately recognize?
sure. I don't know that the patients don't necessarily immediately recognize it. I have one patient in particular. I took her care over. She is an upper cervical patient, absolutely brilliant, editor of medical magazines. She should be an MD, PhD, but she says her line is, women didn't become doctors when I came up through school. So, but she's absolutely
Mhm.
brilliant. She knows her body inside and out. So she gets a NUCA style upper cervical adjustment. Her gag reflex comes back.
Mm.
So she'll make a call into the office when she's brushing her teeth and she goes to gargle and she doesn't have a gag reflex that day. And then she has a couple other tests that she's intuited over years that, say, yeah, something ain't right. You need to get checked out. She'll come in, we'll do our assessment, lo and behold, we do a little ear wiggle and she'll gag herself like, yeah, it's back.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty
That is
wild.
wild.
I went to the gym several weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving, and my back was real tight because we did some crazy back routine, and Dr. James was back in town, and he was walking me through uh, a, 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 a more structured way of how he approaches the upper cervical world, and I was like, well, great, I need an adjustment. My back's real tight now here, and he said, we're going to do this. So I stepped on the plates I've got right here, the weight plates, side by side weight plates, and it showed a asymmetry in weight distribution. He did his assessment, did an ear wiggle, I stood right back up. My back tension was gone, and I stood on the weight plates, and it was about a 10-pound shift from one side to the
Wow.
other with just a little ear wiggle, you know. So that's a full body um, response to a very specific input to the nervous system
Yeah.
directly. And it didn't involve anything HVLA. It was not, a real deep set hold. It wasn't a side posture. It was a little ear wiggle in the upper cervical region. So,
Yeah. I think I'm gonna make a trip out to Charlottesville and get an ear wiggle. No,
come on.
I'm not even kidding, dude.
Yeah.
I lost hearing in this ear, and I think it's nothing but a misalignment of something, and I feel like it actually has to do with my atlas personally. But yeah,
Very
we're
well.
we're gonna jump into your office there and get my get
That'll
my
work.
hearing
Love to
back,
have you.
man. Let's do it. Let's
There
do
you
it.
go.
All right, so
Uh,
so I want to shift a little bit to the patient communication angle. How do you explain? Because you gave me a couple of examples of things you can show, like you can, but how do you explain like
sure.
subtle nervous system shifts to someone who just wants pain gone?
I'm still working on that answer too. I have been for 20 years. Pain is it's a limbic driver of people wanting something done.
Hmm.
I don't care what it is. I just want the pain gone. So the education through that process is I mute mine. I have a lot of information I could give them, but I want to show them that, hey, I can get you feeling better. If you're interested after that, I'm happy to do some
Hmm.
education. One of the main things I tell patients when they come in pain, especially if the pain's been around for a while, is the nervous system it's very, very expensive tissue, and that your body puts tons of energy into keeping it from being injured. And when it is injured, they continue to guard it so that it won't further the injury. So it's very slow to
Mm.
heal. Neuro mapping and neuro reconstruction on all that stuff. You know, look at someone who's had a TBI, a stroke, or what have you. They for years later, if it ever returns fully, they'll still have some issues from that neurological damage. So that's one of the things that I try to make up front, known real well, that hey, if a nerve's involved and it's pinched and irritated, it can take a little bit of time. We want to focus on um, changes that you notice. Can you sit longer? Can you function longer? Is the pain severity
Right.
reduced? These are good steps in the right direction. So we'll hang our hat on that
Hmm.
hook while we can, um, as we allow things to heal up. Hopefully we can do some biohacking and help tissues heal a little bit quicker, with some of the other modalities we have
Yeah.
here.
So, question regarding the upper cervical. I know you said you were full spine, back in Tuck Clinic, and what the was the upper cervical something that, and did you say Dr. What is it, Dr. Tickle? Did I get that right? The
Tickle, yes.
the person that you took the practice over from, is that something he was offering at his practice? Is that why you shifted, or is it something you wanted to bring into your own practice?
It was, I'd say a combination of both. He already had patients that were under an upper cervical style
Okay.
technique for care. I took that over, started to realize some similarities between those patients. He had started on that. And again, that's where that I'm still learning why would I intuit upper cervical versus, a full spine approach. So I'm starting to build out those correlations between patients who have had great upper cervical results and other patients who have presented with similar symptoms, that I can correlate those two a little bit better now that I'm in a clinic that has had that as an
Nice.
option.
You mentioned symptoms, but I don't think this is a symptom chasing approach. I feel like that's like nervous system literacy, in my opinion, honestly. Like, so I
Sure.
love that. I love that.
Yeah, it is there. And two, the demographic in a Charlottesville versus Southwest Virginia is a little bit different
Hmm.
also. You know, there's more, there's a more proactive approach. Folks feel something and they want something done about it so that they don't feel worse, as opposed to waiting until they can't move and then just wanting to get back in the saddle to kind of tear it up again. I still have those patients here, but there's a seeming openness to being a little bit more preventative in this area, which again, our whole collective is about that. We want to help folks live, you know, their big expansive life, as opposed to just bounce in and treat us like a really expensive Advil. And some people still do that here. I get it.
Listen, I'll pay for that Advil all day. Just saying.
Yes.
Not totally the actual Advil, my chiropractor for sure.
I like paying for the Advil, the expensive Advil, less often and with less pain. And that's just kind of how it works.
1,000% true. 1,000% true. All right. This is a good place to pause part one. If you're listening and nodding along, that's intentional. This season is about letting these conversations breathe instead of rushing to the next talking point. So in part two, we keep going, getting into how this mindset actually shows up in practice and how Dr. Lee thinks about tools, technology, and how experience really changes the way you make decisions with patients. I'll see you in the next episode.